Very good morning to one who present here, respected faculty members, esteemed guests, and my dear students. I welcome you all to the session of Tripura University International Literature Festival 2026. So, as we all know, since some years simply passed, but 1971 changed history. Was it just a war or a story of courage, sacrifice, and transformation that still shapes our present? As we explore the 1971 that we remember, let us revisit not just some events, but the memories and meaning behind them. So now let us warmly welcome our esteemed guest to the stage. Sir Subrata Chakraborty, sir. Sir, please. Sir Major General Anil P. Davis, sir. And Rear Admiral S.K. Sir Gupta. I'll give you a brief introduction of the authors here. So, Subrata sir is a co-author of Bangladesh Humiliation, Carnage, Liberation and Chaos, and he produced a podcast series featuring veterans of the 1971 Indo-Pakistan War. He has been a speaker at the National Defense College, New Delhi, and other Indian military institutions. He is a former senior leader at major MNCs like Pepsi, ITC Limited, and Sarigama. The Peninsula Studios. He is a co-founder, where he has directed over 350 musical videos, including the Coke Studios Roots and over 140 documentaries on the history and heritage of the Indian subcontinent. So Major General Anil Deresar, he is the director and CEO of the Peninsula Studios. He is the producer of Victory Through Vision, an audiovisual chronicle of Bangladesh's liberation war in 1971. He was commissioned into 62 Cavalry in June 1981 and later commanded the same regiment. He has held important command staff and instructional appointments. His command appointments include command of an independent armored brigade and an infantry division in the Western Theatre. He was later the commander of the senior command wing, Army War College, Mao, and senior faculty at MDH. He retired after a distinguished career spanning over 36 years in January 2018. Post his retirement, he provided leadership at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. He is a keen sportsman and is credited with creating financially robust properties in sports. He is in particular golf and was a captain of the Delhi Golf Club. Sir S.K. Gupta, he is a former Rear Admiral of Indian Navy. Santosh Kumar Gupta is best known for commanding the White Tigers while embarked in an INS Vikrant during the 1971 Indo-Pakistan War. For his display of leadership and bravery, he was awarded the Mahavir Chakra. During his service, he commanded 4 ships, 2 air squadrons, and the Naval Academy. And also, I would like to introduce the reporters for the session, Devangini Kashyap and Devashri Borwa. With this, I would like to hand over the mic to you, sir.
I will request everyone to come and sit down. Come and sit down there. Come on, sit down. Please. Come and sit, please. Come. Let's get down. Come and sit down, man. Come and sit. It'll be easier. In 1970, elections were held in East and West Pakistan. The results were not acceptable to some of the political leaders in West Pakistan. The consequences of these actions were significant. This gave rise to Bengali nationalism in East Pakistan, who protested, leading to civil war. The martial law administration of Pakistan responded to the brutal crackdown in East Pakistan in March 1971, codenamed Operation Searchlight, on its own citizens. And over 10 million refugees poured into the adjacent states of West Bengal, Assam, and Tripura in India. The Indian political leadership, upon deliberation, decided to restore order by a military intervention. The Indian military fought its third war in 9 years in what is considered to be one of the most decisive victories in history, leading to the creation of Bangladesh. After the liberation of Bangladesh, the Indian military fell back to their positions in India.
Good morning, everyone. I'm audible at the back?
Yeah.
Okay. To start with, all our guests present here today and the students of the Duilf University, welcome. And I hope you enjoy our presentation. The book that was spoken about by the student who introduced us, this is the book which Subrata has co-authored with Mr. Iqbal Chand Malhotra. And as he mentioned that he done a lot of recordings, what today's generation call podcasts of people who participated in the war. And to understand what exactly happened, he did do a lot of research, read a number of books, not only by Indian authors or Indian military leaders, but also by people from the other countries, as also from Pakistan. And that gave him a good insight into what really happened. And he decided to actually put together this presentation and also go ahead and write this book. So there's nothing military about the book, but it's a story of how things panned out during that period, a very important part of our history. And that is what we're going to tell you, the story is what we're going to tell all of you today. Okay. So the little clips on the beginning. So what you just saw sets the background which sucked India into a vortex, not of its own making, presenting unimaginable challenges to a country that had recently come out of two wars. The liberation of Bangladesh was preceded by a 9-month period marked by diplomatic efforts, military preparation, and covert operations. The Bangladeshi freedom fighters, known as the Mukti Bahini, who received crucial training and support from the Indian forces, played a pivotal role in the success of the final campaign. These combined efforts culminated in a 12-day military campaign carried out jointly by the Bangladeshis and Indians in December 71, resulting in Bangladesh's independence. As we explored this epic over 7 years, what emerged was a complex, multi-dimensional strategy deployed by the military, the diplomats, the intelligence services, various ministries, the police, and several other arms of the state. The sheer scale and brilliance of it convinced us that 1971 is an operation of epic proportions which played out across capitals in the world. We will try to connect the dots of what happened through a fast-paced story. The caveat is while this is significant, it is a small part of a much larger operation. In our view, this stands out as one of the most remarkable military victories in history. There are lessons we must remember, and we believe it deserves to be preserved and celebrated?
I would want to dedicate it, first of all, to the people of Bangladesh, because this is really their story. They're freedom fighters, and most of all, to their women, who contributed a great deal and suffered the most. That famous photograph of a woman freedom fighter arriving with a gun in one hand and two children holding their hands to receive us after our Heliborn crossing. And the kindest thing she did was she also brought a pot of rice for us.
Unfortunately, as this epic recedes from memory, the operation is framed and limited in popular imagination by these two pictures, one of General Manekshaw and Mrs. Gandhi, and the other of the surrender ceremonies at the Ramna racecourse in Dhaka. Even these two pictures are getting lost. This does injustice to what lies in between. And our efforts today stitches together a story from recordings narrated by a star cast of veterans from all three services who fought the war. Bangladesh, ladies and gentlemen, is back in the news 54 years after liberation, so it is a good time to revisit 1971. Let's roll over to you, Subrato.
The greatest tribute that has been paid to India in the liberation war of Bangladesh is by Michael Walzer in his seminal book, Just and Unjust Wars. And he goes on to say that it is 20th century's most outstanding example of humanitarian intervention. He also says that the world was aware of it, the world chose to neglect it. India had no option but to go in, and they did an outstanding job.
Good morning, everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and in particular, there are friends and supporters in the audience, which makes it very special. I thank all of you. We'll run through the story. It's your story. So at the end of it, whatever questions you might have, please ask them. This is what the map of India looked like on 13th of August 1947, when it was partitioned into Pakistan and India. 48 hours later, this is what the map looked like of the subcontinent. According to scholars from Pakistan, the root cause of the conflict internal to Pakistan lies in the institutionalized humiliation of East Pakistanis in matters of language, culture, and economics by their fellow citizens in West Pakistan. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who led the Bangladeshi freedom struggle, would sarcastically observe that the spanking infrastructure of Islamabad smelled of jute from Bengal, and the nation's wealth was concentrated in the hands of a mere 22 families in West Pakistan. The fault line metastasized into repeated humiliations and injustice. Till 1971, Pakistan was a country which was united by religion, Islam, but divided by language and culture. Many West Pakistanis shared this view.
In all the previous years, how many years? 24 years? I think most of the time it was establishment really. It was not giving the Bengalis that it may have even started. It's a very difficult thing to say, but it may have even started. When Kairazam said, you also speak, Urdu will be a national language. But for a people who take pride in that language, to them to say, no, for the sake of unity, now Urdu will be imposed upon.
After a remarkably fair election in 1970, the Awami League swept the polls. In East Pakistan, it won all the seats except two with a 40% vote share. President General Yahya Khan announced that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman would become the Prime Minister. Now, the army, big business, the West Pakistani elite, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the leader of Pakistan People's Party, whose picture you see here, and who had lost the election, they prevailed, and as a result, the President Yahya Khan was forced to postpone convening the National Assembly sine die on 1st March 1971. Civil war broke out in East Pakistan and it exploded. To suppress the protesters, the Pakistan Army cracked down on their own citizens between 25th of March and 14th of December 1971. This is the picture of Malika Khan, Secretary of Bangladesh Girl Guides Association, who led rescue missions in Dhaka in December 1971, starting with Jahangir Gate. In an interview, she says that there were women completely naked, abandoned in bunkers, tortured during the war, and many heavily pregnant. This is the picture of Dr. Jeffrey Davis from Australia, who worked in Bangladesh in 1972 under the WHO and specialized in late-term abortion. I quote him, Pakistan infantry would go in and begin to segregate the women, and then they would be put into a compound and made available to the Pakistani troops. We interviewed Pak Army officers who were prisoners of war in Comilla, and the response was shocking. What's the fuss about? The officers said. It was war, and we had orders of kind of instruction to Tika Khan to impregnate as many women as possible. To reintegrate rape survivors back into society, Sheikh Mujib granted them the honorific Viranganas, which means war heroines. However, there were notable exceptions, like Admiral Ehsan of the military governor of East Pakistan. It is said, and he was the former Pak Navy chief, it is said he had the aloofness of a hermit, delicacy of a scholar, and formality of a diplomat. The Rampur-born Chief Martial Law Administrator, Lieutenant General Yaqub Khan, was the alum of Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, whose wife Begum Tuba Khalili was a Calcutta girl. Both the three-star officers resigned their jobs in Dhaka in early March in protest against the government's action and refused to roll out a crackdown, named Blitz, preferring a political solution. The Air Officer commanding Pakistan Air Force, East Pakistan, and Base Commander Dhaka, Air Commodore Zafar Masood, who dissented, was recalled and sacked. Their departure was followed by a regime change. The story goes that the Chief Justice refused to swear in the incoming Chief Martial Administrator, Lieutenant General Tika Khan, known as the Butcher of Balochistan. The Bengali staff boycotted the governor, and the governor was forced to shift to a mess. Soon, President General Yahya Khan arrived in Dhaka, followed by Bhutto, and met Mujib over a fruitless negotiation in the president's house in Dhaka. Seeing things were not going well, Tika Khan asked Major General Khadim Hussain Raja, the div commander of Dhaka, to keep his troops on standby for a crackdown. On the 25th morning, Tika Khan called and said, Khadim, it's tonight. Yahya Khan leaves Dhaka in the evening, and the first target is Mujibur Rahman and his Awami League colleagues. The special service group dispatched a platoon to capture Mujib from his home. Mujib was first imprisoned in Faisalabad and then in Miawali in West Pakistan. As soon as Yahya landed in Karachi, the US-made M24 tanks rolled into Dhaka city, and just see what the Pakistan Army did that night. The man who saw the carnage from his suite in Intercontinental Hotel Dhaka was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the future Prime Minister of Pakistan, the man who famously promised to bleed India with 1,000 cuts. And 54 years later, the recent massacres in Pahalgam became that policy's most recent victim. While Dhaka fell, the hinterland continued to be controlled by nationalists. The chosen one to put down the resistance was Major General Abdullah Niazi, whose picture you see here. Niazi writes in his autobiography, Tikka let loose all military arms as if raiding an enemy and not dealing with his own misguided people. The military action was a display of stark cruelty, more merciless than the massacres of Bukhara and Baghdad by Changiz and Halku Khan, or the Jallianwala massacre by General Dyer. Niazi further writes, no one was punished for the genocide, ironically rewarded. The architects of Operation Searchlight, Lieutenant General Tikka Khan, went on to become the Chief of Army Staff of Pakistan and Governor of Punjab. Major Khadim Hussain Raja was sent as ambassador to Mozambique, and Major Rao Farman Ali became the Managing Director of Fauji Foundation, Pakistan. Unquote. On the 10th of April, Niazi takes over from Lieutenant General Ikka Khan and becomes the Chief Martial Administrator. In his first meeting in the ops room in Dhaka cantonment, Niazi said in Urdu, which many of you might follow, मैं इस हरामजादे कौम की नस्ल बदल दूंगा, ये मुझे क्या समझते हैं? Roughly translated, it means he will let his troops loose on the women of Bengal. Having heard his commander loud and clear, Major Mushtaq, an officer from Jessore, went to the bathroom in the command headquarters and shot himself in the head. In cold numbers, according to Justice K. M. Shobhan of Bangladesh Supreme Court, Niazi kept his promise. It is estimated that 200,000 women were raped in Bangladesh by Pakistani troops. 3 million people were killed by their own security agencies, and 10 million fled to the states of Tripura, Assam, and West Bengal. These three states never recovered after that, but the Pakistan commanders just brazened it out.
Very well, Mr. Pradhan. We are proud of this fact. I deny this accusation of atrocity.
India was caught between a rock and a hard place, constrained by a single provision in international diplomacy called non-interference, embedded in Article 2 of the United Nations Charter. The first movers from India were intelligence agencies and diplomats. Several police, BSF, and intelligence officials were part of the operations and made several contributions to the outcome of the war, which we don't know about. At the time, the Colombo-born Mr. Atma Jairam was Director of Intelligence Bureau, Mr. Ramnath Rao was Head of RAW RNAW, and Mr. K. Rustamji, Director General BSF. They were assisted by Mr. P. N. Banerjee and Mr. Golak Majumdar and several officers who continue to remain anonymous. The agencies moved really swiftly. By the end of March, assisted by the BSF, the Awami League leaders escaping Searchlight began crossing into India, and amongst them was Mujib's deputy, the eminent Tajuddin Ahmed, a leader, statesman with exceptional abilities. He crossed the border and met Indian Prime Minister in Delhi on 2nd and 3rd of April when significant decisions were taken. Shortly, Hussain Ali, the Deputy High Commissioner of Pakistan in Calcutta, along with the entire 70-member staff, was persuaded by the BSF to switch allegiance to the incoming government in exile. That week, a provincial government of Bangladesh was formed in Goitanath Tala, a border town in East Pakistan, a territory now called Mujibnagar, in full view of the international press.
Conveyed to the respective nations that if liberty has got an standing with them and to do something positive to elevate the misery of the unfortunate people of Bangladesh.
Here, the first cabinet was sworn in, and Tajuddin Ahmed became the first Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and that too a wartime Prime Minister. The Bangladesh government in exile, along with a radio station, was set up in a BSF facility in Calcutta. With this, the first box of the grand plan was ticked. However, what escapes notice is despite the seats Awami League had won in elections, and I tell this to the students, 60% did not vote for them, and not every East Pakistani was supportive of seceding from Pakistan. And in May 1971, there was a section of population in Bangladesh that was both suspicious of and hostile to India. The roots lay in the reason that had led to the partition of Bengal in 1905. Between April and October, the ISI and the CIA engaged with this caucus and also managed to infiltrate the Mujibnagar cabinet. Multiple attempts were made to undermine the efforts to liberate Bangladesh and destabilize the government in exile, which almost capsized. These efforts were effectively countered by the West Bengal and Calcutta police based on intelligence inputs. Prime Minister Tajuddin Ahmed survived an assassination attempt, but with his colleagues stood firmly for the cause. West Bengal was put under the president's rule. Just going back a few months, the headlines in India screamed that Ganga has been hijacked to Lahore. Ganga was an Indian Airlines Fokker Friendship flying from Srinagar to Jammu. The Pakistani media went into a frenzy, celebrating the incident as a great victory for the struggle in Kashmir. The date of the hijack was ostensibly chosen since it was speculated that Rajiv Gandhi, the son of the Prime Minister, would be commanding the aircraft on the day. The aircraft was blown up on the tarmac of Lahore Airport, and the event was televised on Pakistan TV. Following which, the Indians withdrew the overflight permission to Pakistani aircraft, and the matter shifted to the International Court of Justice. Soon, the Pakistanis discovered that the aircraft was hijacked with a toy pistol and a fake wooden grenade, and Ganga had been withdrawn from service and had been reinducted a few days back before the hijack. Pakistan accused wrong, but the agency denied it was a false flag operation. Now, to show Pakistan's brutality and army's success in suppressing revolt, 7 Pakistani journalists, including Anthony Mascarenas from Karachi, were invited to Dhaka by Zulfikar Khan. The officers bragged about the brutality they had unleashed, the targeted killings carried out, the rapes to suppress disorder, and they proudly showed off rotting bodies of students in Jagannath Hall in Dhaka University. Tony found this revolting and did the unthinkable. He escaped with his family from Karachi to the UK and met Harold Evans, the editor of Sunday Times, who, upon verifying that Sony was reporting the truth, put out a double-page center-spread article under one word, genocide, signed Anthony Mascarenas. Along with many brave journalists, the celebrity who played a key part in taking this tragedy to the world was the Beatle, George Harrison, who all of you know, as he mounted concert for Bangladesh in Madison Square Garden in New York, and you see him here with Bob Dylan. The tragedy was now getting internationalized. While we in India had a humanitarian crisis of unimaginable proportions, and the Pakistan army was engaged in perpetrating violence, the White House maintained a deafening silence. And the reason was, at the time, the US was deep into Vietnam War. On the other side of the globe, the Chinese, interestingly, ambushed a Soviet patrol on the disputed Zenbao-Damansky Island on the Ussuri River on its eastern front. The Soviets retaliated and pounded the Chinese side, and the American satellite photographs show that the island was so pockmarked that it looked like a moonscape. China and US interests converged against the Soviets at a time when East Pakistan was descending into chaos. While all this was brewing in the background, President Yahya Khan calls on the White House. Unknown to the Indians, in a private conversation, Nixon told Yahya that he was the chosen one to open the channel with the Chinese. And in exchange, US would tilt towards Pakistan. The World Bank was instructed to keep Yahya afloat till the Chinese deal was done. From this moment onwards, the White House's policy gets encapsulated in a memo Nixon scribbled, which reads, "Don't squeeze Yahya. Don't underline price." But a crisis always throws up a few good men of courage and character. One such individual was Kenneth Keating, the US ambassador to New Delhi, a lawyer from New York, and the other was Archer Blood, a career diplomat and the US Consul General in Dhaka, East Pakistan. Both kept up a stream of diplomatic cables to the State Department describing in detail the savage excesses of the Pak army and the snowballing refugee crisis in India. On 6th April, the US consulate in Dhaka did the unthinkable. It fired off a telegram. Now, conveying open dissent against the policies of their own government in what came to be known as the Blood Telegram. The White House exploded in rage at the insolence of the Dhaka team as the cable hit the circuit. Archer Blood was soon recalled by Nixon and sent into professional exile. His career thereafter went sideways and will stand forever a shining testimony of what decent human beings must always do: stand up for what is right, regardless of the consequences and the price to be paid. At the time, Consul General Blood was filing his cables from Dhaka. Manoj Ghosh from The Statesman, a leading daily in Calcutta, who was snooping for news in the nearby East Pakistan border, escorted an Italian business executive called Polsetti to Calcutta, who had walked to the border, escaping the carnage in Dhaka. What started with the Italian in a week or two became a deluge, climbing to a total of staggering 10 million refugees in a few months. A young US aid staffer from Dhaka, Eric Griffin, confronted Kissinger in Islamabad, and he said the Pak army was carrying out genocide in East Pakistan and this nonsense had to stop. Director Intelligence Bureau Atma Jairam was offered with this familiar Pak army playbook of targeting Hindus in Pakistan as a sinister strategy to set up retributory killings, triggering a spiral of violence in India. He called several less publicized meetings with chiefs of police of all the states for ensuring peace in the country and also shared his concern that the ISI was sending in spies with the refugees. It all added up to making it an explosive cocktail, and India faced a full-blown crisis. Despite these challenges, the state police forces ensured that there were no major incidents of communal violence, and the BSF was instructed not to seal the borders to the unfortunate refugees. Remember Gaza. Graphic accounts of refugee camps is recorded during Senator Edward Kennedy's visit to India. The camps reeked of human excreta with no sanitation, little access to clean water, cholera epidemic was rampant, extreme violence was normal, and their Indian neighbors were resentful. When Kennedy asked one of the camp directors what he most urgently needed, the man replied, a crematorium. Prime Minister visited the refugee camps in Assam, Tripura, and Bengal. Shaken to the core and exasperated, she pushed the refugee camp director to hurry up. The exhausted officer turned to the Prime Minister with folded hands and said, Madam, you will hurry, it takes time. She couldn't believe what she saw and resolved to set things right. India sent out global appeal to 61 countries. Diplomats and legislators fanned out, but the response of almost all the leaders was disappointing. They all hid behind the fig leaf of non-interference in East Pakistan. The exceptions being France and UK. India stood alone. In the middle of the genocide, Chow En-lai sends a message to Yahya Khan inviting Kissinger to China. Kissinger arrives in Delhi on his way to a secret visit to Peking. He publicly commits to India that in case of a conflict, US would stand by her against China. The wrap-up of the trip was a breakfast meeting with the Prime Minister. The story goes that when Kissinger subtly warned India against intervening in East Pakistan and asked the Prime Minister what he intended to do, speaking in a soft tone, the Prime Minister said, if the US government and the US President cannot control the situation, then I'm going to ask the chief, pointing to General Manekshaw, to do the needful. On the 9th of July, unknown to the world, Kissinger flies to Islamabad and from there on to Peking to meet Chow En-lai. India featured significantly in the talks, and Kissinger was struck by Chow's bitter animosity towards India. Upon returning from China, Kissinger meets the Indian ambassador in Washington, D.C., and a debrief known as the LK Shah telegram was sent to Delhi. It said US would be unable to help India against China in case of an Indo-Pak conflict in which China comes to Pakistan's support. Kissinger had reneged on his commitment made in Delhi just a week before. India's response to this geopolitical revolution of fresh axis between Pakistan, China, and the United States was both swift and sure. The Treaty of Peace and Friendship and Cooperation between India and Soviet Union, which was in the oven from 1969, was brought out and signed. This set the stage for a superpower conflict which would engulf the subcontinent and is best summarized by Kissinger in his memoirs. He notes, with the treaty with Kremlin, India threw a lighted match into a powder keg. Back in West Pakistan on 11th August, a military court decided Mujib, who was incarcerated in Miawali, would be tried for treason punishable by death. Anil.
In East Pakistan, the civil war was raging, led by officers and men of the Pak Army, East Bengal Regiment, and East Pakistan Rifles, who had deserted. The Mutti Bahini was made up of officers and men who defected from the Pak Army, led by Colonel M.A.G. Osmani. When Searchlight was unleashed, they struck back at the Pakistan Army. Major Ziaur-ur-Rahman, the future president of Bangladesh, killed his commanding officer, the second in command, and several others, including their families in Chittagong. But after the initial strike by the Bengalis, their war started to go badly. Niazi, having taken over in April, hit back hard, and the reprisals were barbaric. The casualty rate among the rebels was a staggering over 30% of the guerrillas ran away in the face of the Pakistani action, forcing their commanders to retreat into India. Consider the challenges the Indians faced. The Bengali officers who had deserted the Pak army were graduates of the Pak Military Academy, Kakul, indoctrinated to view India as an adversary. Several had fought the Indians in 1965, and naturally, not all were happy seeking support of the Indians. The initial setback created a whole set of issues, and by June, the movement was collapsing. As for the Indians, a structural solution was found, and Major General B.N. Sarkar was appointed as Director of Operations in Calcutta. He became the linchpin of the covert offensive. 7 camps ringing East Pakistan that you see on the map, commanded by officers of the rank of brigadier, began training the Mukti Bahini. 2 more camps were run by the RAW, commanded by Major General Sujan Singh Oban, who had earlier raised a lethal force with the Tibetan refugees. Soon, arms and war material began to flow. The perseverance and efforts paid off, and the game started turning in August until November. Highly motivated East Bengal Regiment platoons and irregulars kept up the pressure with reckless courage as they wore out and demoralized the Pakistani armed forces.
Mukti Bahini had been raised from the officers and men from the East Bengal Rifles and other paramilitary forces, trained, equipped to wage irregular warfare against the Pakistani forces in East Pakistan. So at that time, the battalion was engaged in operating together with our Mukti Bahini colleagues across the border. And we were literally, wearing lungis and operating with our friends from the Mukti Bahini. It was quite a unique experience in that sense. And I make this point because I think those operations which were conducted before the actual outbreak of war were very significant in context of the fact that it firstly brought the Mukti Bahini and us very close together.
Starting June, a high-profile attack was carried out by the crack platoon on the intercontinental Dhaka, where the World Bank aid mission was staying. In September, Air Chief Marshal P.C. Lal authorized Project Kilo Flight. This clandestine operation focused on training 9 pilots from the Pakistani Air Force who had defected to India. Group Captain Chandan Singh, the station commander Jorat, oversaw the secret training camp, which was situated deep within the jungles of Dimapur, Nagaland. However, the operation that stand out involved the Indian Navy-led commander M.N.R. Samant, who was awarded a Mahavir Chakra. This story starts in Toulon, France, where the newly built submarine PNS Mangrove was undergoing acceptance trials by the Pakistan Navy crew. 9 Bengali submariners, led by 26-year-old Abdul Wahid Chaudhary, decided to desert ship. 2 days later, these Bengali submariners arrived at the Indian Embassy in Madrid. A telegram went out to New Delhi and promptly came the terse response, arranged to fly them to Delhi immediately. The Bengali sailors land in Delhi via Rome and Geneva in the office of Captain Mihir Roy, Director Naval Intelligence. Captain Roy now becomes the architect of Operation Jackpot, the underwater guerrilla war to be waged in East Pakistan. The training was conducted near historic Plassey, 170 kilometers north of Calcutta. Here, a team of Indian Navy experts was assembled to impart training as frogmen and commandos in sabotage and underwater warfare to Bengali freedom fighters.
The commando operation was conceived by Naval Headquarters and dovetailed into Operation Jackpot, induction of 6 more Indian Navy personnel, making a total of 8 personnel, 2 officers and 6 other ranks to start the camp along with augmentation of 8 Bangladesh naval sailors who had escaped from France. The requirements of our training was to recruit able-bodied swimmers from the border area. So there was a lot of camps on the border.
This story, these highly motivated frogmen crossed the border assisted by the BSF and RNAW. The first covert operation started in Chittagong. A frogman would stealthily approach a ship underwater and after scraping the barnacles of a small patch with his knife, carefully attach a limpet mine to the steel hull. He would then yank the detonator pin and swim away as fast as he could. The first attack achieved devastating results, with 9 of the 11 ships targeted, sinking and blocking the channel. These audacious Mukti Bahini commandos and frogmen caused havoc. They not only crippled the ports of Chittagong, Chalna, and Khulna, but also destroyed harbor installations, bridges, and other military assets. The scale of devastation reverberated in the insurance industry in London. I wish to reiterate the operations by the Mukti Bahini between April and November were not only integral to the liberation war, but these were marked by extraordinary bravery and sacrifice. Equally remarkable was the role played by the Indians who managed the training camps for Bangladeshi guerrillas. It is a case of great omission that the stories of clandestine operations by the Mukti Bahini and their Indian instructors from April to November are not more widely shared and their contributions remain shrouded in secrecy.
On the heels of the Chittagong attack, 1600 miles near Karachi, a 20-year-old General Duty Pilot Officer Rashid Minhas, whose picture you see here, radioed that he was being hijacked while taking off on a sortie from Pakistan Air Force Base Masroor. The plane crashed short of the border, killing Minhas instantly. Another body was found some distance behind. The second body was that of 50-year-old Matiur Rahman, an instructor pilot. Matiur was a graduate of Pakistan Air Force Academy Risalpur and a Bengali resident of Dhaka. The gallantry citations of Pakistan Air Force and Bangladesh Air Force gives the details of the incidents. Soon after the fall of Dhaka, the New York Times interviewed Pak Air Chief Air Marshal Rahim Khan, and I quote, "Is it true that the Bengali pilots in the Pakistan Air Force were grounded and not allowed to fly during the war?" He replied, "Yes, it is true. We were worried that one might try to leave Pakistan with a plane. One tried to do it, as you know." By October, things were really hotting up, and there was a raid on a tea garden next to the river Thalai, south of Assam, and which spiraled into a fierce battle, and an entire Indian brigade got sucked in, with the Indians suffering significant casualties before they got better of their adversities. The battle was studied quickly, and they recognized that the Pakistan soldier was no pushover, and you underestimated him at your own peril. His battle drills were of high order, and in face of adversity, he held his ground. It also reinforced the fact that Pakistanis are known to play a strong game with a weak hand, and you can't afford to take a foot off the pedal while dealing with them. While the Battle of Dhalai was on, General Yahya Khan and President Podgorny met at a disastrous meeting in Persepolis in Iran. The Pakistan president rebuffed the Soviet leader's suggestion for peace. For the record, it was only after this meeting in the end of October the Soviets finally gave up trying to keep the Pakistanis together. Until then, they had drawn a red line around one Pakistan. This should be remembered. Moscow signaled support by immediately sending Deputy Foreign Minister Grubin and then Air Chief Kutko to Delhi at a time when the Indian Prime Minister was leaving to meet Richard Nixon in the White House. Kissinger writes, "It was a dialogue between the deaf. The White House tapes reveal Nixon snarled at her. It was an angry, protracted brawl where the Indian Prime Minister treated the US President like a school teacher dealing with a slightly backward school. There was respect for the Indian Prime Minister, but equally a very visceral dislike," writes Samuel Hoskinson, the CIA analyst on the subcontinent. She was a steely personality, a real force to deal with. Kissinger writes it was the worst meeting Nixon had with any foreign leader. But one of the major sticking points in the White House was Indians were interfering in Pakistan by training the Mukti Bahinis General Day spoke about. India maintained it was the work of the Bangladesh government in exile. On the 1st of December, leading Seaman Chiman Singh, whose interview you just saw, was training the frogmen in Plassey and had inadvertently walked into East Pakistan with Mukti Bahini commandos. With the Prime Minister in the White House, this caused more than a flutter in Plassey, Fort William, and South Block. His death, or worse, his capture would reveal India's hand and provide the evidence the White House was so desperately seeking. Around the time the Prime Minister reached Germany from the US, the Mukti Bahini was fighting a fierce battle northeast of Calcutta. And soon the Indian army followed them, crossing the international border, clashing with the Pakistanis, who lost 13 to 14 Chaffee tanks to the 45 cavalry in the Battle of Garipur. 3 sabres of the Pakistan Air Force flew in from Dhaka to provide ground support to the Pakistani troops, and the Indian Air Force, flying naps out of Dum Dum, were vectored to bring them down over Koira. One Pakistani pilot ejected landing on the Indian side, and the Pakistan squadron. Landing on the Indian side, and the Pakistan Air Force war diaries record that a young Indian Army officer rushed and saved the injured pilot from being lynched by the villagers. The Indian officer, later Indian Army commander, Lieutenant General S.S. Panag writes, in that instant, amidst the violence and confusion of battle, I felt a profound weight of humanity and a reminder that even in war, mercy and dignity can prevail. He saved the Pakistani pilot. He further writes, the Pakistani pilot, Flight Lieutenant Parvez Qureshi, was a squadron commander and a Sword of Honor awardee from Pakistan Air Force Academy, Risalpur. This officer was the first prisoner of war in 1971 and rose to become the Chief of Air Staff of Pakistan Air Force, an office he held during the Kargil War in 1999. It was during this battle that the 22 Rajputs of the Indian Army picked up a man they believed was a Pakistani spy. Ram Singh, a soldier of the unit, recognized the sailor who was in school with his brother in Gopulgarh, his village in Haryana. He saved the day for the missing in action sailor, leading Seaman Chiman Singh.
The government of India decided in April 1971 to go to war to stop the genocide and to enable the refugees to return to their homes. However, General Manekshaw, the Chief of Army Staff, who later became the Field Marshal, had persuaded the government to postpone the offensive till the Indian Army was fully prepared.
In the narrative of the diplomatic engagement between India and the international community, including India's neighbors, there are 2 distinct phases during 1971. The first phase is from 1971 March till December 4th, which was the phase of diplomatic engagement before the outbreak of hostilities. From the 4th of December till the 16th of December, the focus was on the campaign on the ground, the military campaign, and the efforts made by some countries to bring a halt to this campaign before it could be successfully completed.
Indian officials have now announced that regular Indian forces have been instructed to move into East Pakistan in what the Indian Defense Secretary is quoted in the press as calling a, quote, no holds barred, unquote, operation. The very purpose which draws us together here, building a peaceful world, will be thwarted if a situation is accepted in which a government intervenes across its borders in the affairs of another with military force in violation of the United Nations Charter.
We have suffered in the hands of Pakistan for aggression, and we are not going to take it anymore. I wish to give a very serious warning to the Council that we shall not be a party to any solution which will mean continuation of oppression of these Pakistani people.
Just look at the cast of commanders at the time. We had a wonderful set of officers who were commanding the Army, Navy, and Air Force. And it was in this complex environment of hosting 10 million refugees, a resolute government of Bangladesh in exile, diplomatic challenges which you saw, political turmoil, espionage we spoke about, training the irregulars that General Dere spoke about, bonding with the officers of East Bengal Regiment, the war plans were drafted. The diplomats and the intelligence agencies were in lockstep with this plan. Look at this map. This is what Bangladesh looked like, East Pakistan looked like in 1971. Hostile riverine terrain, the center of gravity Dhaka, moated by the rivers Ganga and Brahmaputra that merge to become the Padma, which joins with the Meghna that also protects its eastern flank. The Pakistani commanders rightly believed that Dhaka was impregnable due to its natural riverine defenses. All three arms of the Indian army, of the Indian military, the Mukti Bahini, were deployed. And you will see a formidable adversary backed by the United States and China being garroted by the Indian and Bangladeshi troops as they went for the kill and converged on Dhaka. This is our former naval chief and a 1971 war veteran, and he encapsulates it for us. And all of you who are students and you hear that we'll go to war, this is what it takes. I quote him. War fighting requires seamless coordination between the military, diplomatic, and intelligence establishments and other organs of the state and needs support of the people. It turned out to be a two-front war, and it added threat of Chinese from the Himalayas, a hostile US, and an indifferent or at best an ambivalent international community, and a possibility of a UN-mandated ceasefire. The war was fought under intense pressure, and the orders were wrapped up fast. On the 28th of November, Cabinet Secretary P. Swaminathan confirmed to the Government of India that all arms of the state were battle ready. And on the 30th of November, Ambassador Pegov of Russia carried a message that Kremlin will support India in East Pakistan. On the evening of February of 3rd of December, having whipped themselves into a frenzy over the last 9 months, the Pakistan Air Force, inspired by the Israelis, made the first move and attacked the Indian airfields under a code named Changiz Khan. We start the stories from the battlefield with a story of a 26-year-old naval aviator who flew not for the Navy but the Indian Air Force flying hunters out of Pathankot. Let's hear his story.
3rd of December, as you all know, Pakistan Air Force carried out a preemptive attack, so-called preemptive, and they attacked 7 of our airfields. Fortunately, very little damage was done. And by early next morning, my squadron was launched into the offensive. As I mentioned, this Hunter fighter bomber had extra fuel tanks, so it could go very far. In fact, it could go even as far as the Canberra bomber could. So we were tasked with attacking Pakistan Air Force targets, mainly airfields, looking for their aircraft in pens and hangars, their radar station, and a few targets of economic importance like oil refineries and so on.
Before I go any further, I would like to share a story about a raid on a Pakistan Air Force base now called Noor Khan outside Islamabad, which is a part of military aviation folklore. Among the assets destroyed was an aircraft belonging to the American defense representative in Islamabad. His name was Chuck Yeager, who was a bit of a cynic because he had broken the sound barrier in 1947. The attack was led by a young pilot, Lieutenant Arun Prakash, who rose to become the naval chief. The officer has never claimed this hit. Wing Commander Karambaya, who flew with the young pilot, told me with a chuckle the reason was that Lieutenant Prakash had forgotten to switch on his gun camera. I tell this story because it's a shining example of living by a code of honor. For me, it is this random acts of living by a higher order value that makes citizens like us, proud of someone who sort of holds himself to such high standards. And it gives nation reason to find role models in people like Admiral Prakash and Admiral Gupta. Now, to establish sea control in the Bay of Bengal, the availability of the aircraft carrier was vital. INS Vikrant was in poor material state with one of her 4 boilers out of action. As early as June, the naval chief gave directions to the aircraft carriers to be battle ready, and this directive served to change the defensive attitude of the service to a calculated belligerence. The commanding officer of the Vikrant, along with the naval engineers, made the aircraft carrier battle ready. But the Vikrant faced an existential threat from submarine Ghazi, which was from Pakistan, and it had been dispatched from Karachi on the 14th to hunt and sink the Vikrant. According to the official history of the Indian Navy, on the 3rd December evening, the Pakistan submarine went down outside the Vizag harbor with Captain Zafar Muhammad Khan and 92 submariners due to an underwater explosion. With the Ghazi out of the way, on the 4th, the mother, as the Vikrant was called, sails out of Andamans where she was hidden by the Navy.
Now, the first
I would like to mention that the officer is here in the audience.
target that we had on the 4th of December was to air attack on Cox's Bazar, where there was an airfield and some aircraft parked there. Soon after that, the main target actually was Chittagong Harbour. Chittagong Harbour was the main port, Chittagong was the main port, and it had all the infrastructure that a good city would have.
The Battle of Akhora, which is just opposite Agartala, in my view, stands out an outstanding example of what a brigade can do to a fixed fortified position of the adversary, all in a matter of 72 hours. It was an outstanding achievement of going around the objective and making the enemy flee under distress. That was the tactical level. The flight of the Pakistanis from Akhora acted like a trigger for what happened thereafter. They ran and went on to what would have been an occupied position by abandoning that.
Now in the west, Karachi was attacked, and they used these missile boats to attack Karachi. And the parting shot of this operation was a single missile fired at an oil tank farm in Karachi, reigniting a blaze which had been started in the morning. But from the Navy in the west, let's go back to the east, where the war was not going as per plan. Firstly, in faraway Miawali in West Pakistan, Mujibur Rahman, who was incarcerated there, was handed out a death sentence by the military court. Second, the formidable Pakistan diplomatic corps worked relentlessly with the Americans to bring about a UN-mandated ceasefire. And finally, the Indian ground forces was halted by a single squadron of the Pakistan Air Force stationed in Dhaka.
When the veto took place, the United States re-attempted to bring its resolution because it wanted to stop the war in East Pakistan. It wanted to stop the losses that the Pakistani army were facing in East Pakistan. And on the 5th of December, it brought back another resolution. And this time it got countries like Argentina, who are on the Security Council, to also sponsor it. But again, it stopped short of calling for a political settlement in East Pakistan. And again, the same pattern of voting took place. The 11 sub-countries in the Security Council supported the United States and Argentina. 2 countries abstained, which was the United Kingdom and France, and 2 opposed, which was again Soviet Union and Poland. So again, this was the second veto on the 5th of December.
I will narrate what was happening at Teesgaon that morning from say 6 o'clock till 3:50 in the afternoon. The Sukhois came, they attacked. Then again hunters came, they attacked. So we kept them busy. And the Pakistani pilots in their sabers kept coming up, sortie after sortie, to intercept. In the bargain, on that day, we lost 5 hunters and 1 Sukhoi aircraft. They lost 3 sabers.
So the war was not going as per plan, as you can see. And against this background, the chief arrived at the Prime Minister's office to find the Prime Minister absorbed in a morning ritual of doing a crossword puzzle. He reported that the war was not going as per plan. The fight put up by the Pakistanis was cause for concern, and the threat of the UN-mandated ceasefire meant the window of opportunity was closing. Then Malik Shaw recalls the response of the 54-year-old Prime Minister in an interview to BBC many years later. He says, "She disarmed me with a smile and said, 'Sam, you can't win every morning.'" She shared a joke, the mood lightened, she poured him his coffee, and the general returned to his office confident that the Prime Minister had his back. And she left for the Parliament just around the time we're back in Dhaka, the Indian Air Force stepped up to the plate, and 6th turned out to be a rather busy day.
If it was a question of talking to the Pak government, well, 9 months is a pretty long time, and if they're not going to listen in 9 months, what guarantee was there that they were going to listen in the next month or two? Now, the present reality is that a new country, a new state has come into being. Its name is Bangladesh.
I just pause here for a second because there are a lot of young ladies here. So there's a bit of what happened in the Air Force and the Navy. It will just give you a sense that, war fighting is a very complex process where people lose their lives fighting the war. So next 5-10 minutes, just watch and you'll get a sense as to how this whole thing plays out. It's very, very difficult what they do. And we don't understand it because they don't talk about it. So I would request you to just bear with me for about 4 or 5 minutes. You'll get a sense as to what the Indian military did.
It led the mission next morning with 4 aircraft, with escorts, and I got into dive with 3 aircraft training behind me. In the dive, you could only hear the hiss of the wind passing the canopy and that monotonous groan of the engine. In a vertical dive, as if you're suspended with a thread from top, I could see the runway marking. Speed came 2 kilometers. I released the bombs. I pulled up hard and climbed up, turning left to the. I saw where I had aimed about 400, 500 yards up the runway. My 2 bombs had dropped right in the middle of the runway. And then I saw number 2, number 3, number 4, all 8 bombs that we carried on 4 aircraft fell on the runway. And then I hear a voice from the flying control, from the Pakistani Air Force, saying, "Good show." He says, "You got away this time, we'll get you next time." Next morning, I led this 3rd mission onto that one, and we put another 8 holes on the top. Now, Pakistani Air Force was really grounded.
Now what happens is on the 7th morning, as you can see, the Indian Air Force had knocked out the Pakistanis out of Bangladesh. And this is when the Corps Commander of 4 Corps, which is based in Tezpur, they had gone down to Agartala from here, they decided to carry out the special heliborne operation to select, which is just south of Assam.
Sagar Singh decided we were going to take over Ceylon. So 7th morning we were told to go to Kailasha. And Brigadier Quinn and Charan Singh came and took Sandhu and they showed where they wanted us to operate from. We picked a place called Kalora, which is just inside East Pakistan. So then they told us midday, 4-5 Gurkhas, they were the people we were going to carry to Ceylon, are going to be arriving at Kalora about midday. And 4-5 Gurkhas had been given a day off on the 7th of December, but they had gone through a huge battle, 3 or 4 battles, and they had lost even their 2 IC, they had lost quite a few officers and men. So about 2:45, I was the first one to get airborne. I think it's by the time it was the 5th or the 6th helicopter, Pakistan Army started surrounding the field and they were firing at us. Second time when we went, the amount of bullets that are coming towards us and tracer bullets. If you see a tracer bullet, it means there are 4 more bullets behind it. So we did total of 22 flights.
Now, why did this operation take place? The operation took place because they, in helicopters, put in Gurkha troops south of Sylhet in a place called Mirapara to hold back the Pakistani brigades so that they could not fall back to save Dhaka. It's like playing chess. This is the reason why they carried this operation out. And for 10 days, the Gurkhas and the officer who was there, he lost his leg during that operation. He stepped on a mine, El Cardozo. He will tell the story as to what the Gurkhas ended up doing.
We fought at overwhelming end, and finally the Pakistani surrendered. We were shocked to learn that we were only half of the time. And we got the surprise of our life because there were 3 brigades. These brigades, 2 full colonels, 173 officers, 290 JC, and 8,000 troops surrendered to 652.
Now, imagine you're fighting a war, right? And the CIA goes and reports to Nixon that after Bangladesh is liberated, the Indian cabinet has decided that West Pakistan will be dismembered, Pakistan occupied Kashmir will be reintegrated into India, and the Pakistan military destroyed. Samuel Hoskinson, the CIA hand in White House, claims that the US had incontrovertible evidence about India's plans. Based on this, White House decided to escalate. And all the students who are here must understand this is the way global politics works. So what do they do? Kissinger, George Bush, and Al Haig of the US administration met the tough ambassador of China to the United States. His name was Wang Hua in a safe house in New York. Kissinger told the Chinese, as the Indians advanced into East Pakistan was gaining momentum, and when you read newspapers today and you talk about what Trump is doing, you must understand that it's very similar. US had triggered 3 actions to stop the Indians. First, Admiral Elmo Zumwalt of the US Navy Task Force 74, led by aircraft carrier Enterprise, had been ordered to be deployed from the Gulf of Tonkin, which you know where it is, to the Bay of Bengal. So they were moving an aircraft carrier to the Bay of Bengal. Second, the White House was breaking US law, and King Hussein of Jordan had been asked to move 26 US built planes of the Jordanian Air Force to Pakistan. Third, the Shah of Iran had been asked to cut off all oil supplies to India. And fourth, US had cut off all aid and radar equipment to India. The inscrutable Wang Hua said he will convey this to Beijing. I am taking a creative license to speculate that much to Kissinger's consternation, in faraway Bombay, the Western Naval Command gave orders to carry out the second attack on Karachi, codenamed Operation Python. 4 missiles struck Karachi with devastating results. The first missile hit a oil tank farm, causing a bonfire which the Indian Navy celebrates to date. Indian Navy now exercise dominance on the North Arabian Sea. And back in Sylhet, Major Krishna Rao's troops began to bottle up the adversary. This is a very important map because what the Indians did is that they held the Pakistanis up in Sylhet. Soon as Sagat is confident the Pakistan army has been pinned down in Sylhet and cannot fall back to save Dhaka, he decides to turn his gaze on the capital. He directs Major Ben Gonzalez, General Officer commanding 57 Mountain Div, to move over 6,000 troops under his command across the river Meghna. And since we are in Assam, we understand what the rivers look like because we are next to the Brahmaputra, which is as wide as 16 miles wide and strike Dhaka. This was a swivel moment. No commander had imagined that Sagat Singh would change course and instead of Kumilla, get his forces to leap across the mighty Meghna. The sheer scale and the clinical execution of the operations you will see now added to his laurels earning Lieutenant Sagat Singh the sobriquet of being one of India's finest combat generals. You must remember, he spent a lot of time in Phase 4. 9th December, according to his biographer, was the most exciting day in Sagat Singh's life, and let's find out why.
The operation of crossing the Meghna was only a matter known to Group Captain Chandan Singh and General Sagat. But we had lifted over 600 already. So the army was very confident that we would be able to lift this division, which was to be lifted from Agartala across the Meghna.
I think on the 8th, that sometime he took a decision that it would be possible to cross the Meghna the next day. And about, I think, 1:30 or 2 o'clock, Elliott helicopter lands at the Rambaria Stadium. And from it emerged my Division Commander General Gonzalez with his ADC carrying a pile of papers in his hand. And when I saw the maps, it wasn't just across the Meghna. Maps even showed us Dhaka. We were actually quite happy about it, though we were going into enemy unknown territory.
We lifted a total of 689 troops to Sylhet and also lifted 6,011 troops across the Meghna to 3 different locations from Brahmanbaria, right across the Meghna, by day and by night.
He gets to me and says,
I just want to mention one thing, that General David's father, whose picture you just saw, he was Air 2 in Shillong during the war. So all this work that you saw, we told till now, was done under his command. So he was a very important man. He got an AVSM for the 1971 war.
Shami, what about your tanks? I said, sir, I'll give it a try. When you have a commander who is as strong, as willing, as capable, no matter what order he gives you in battle, your answer has to be a yes, sir. I said, sir, yes, but I did not know how I would cross. Meghna at that point, to a young man, I was all of 27, looks like an ocean. I could not see the other side. Having said yes, it took some time to understand how I could do it. I said, sir, I need a helicopter to take a reconnaissance of the river and see where I can cross. He said, take it. So I marked on my map, flying in a helicopter, the islands that I would have to hit, because crossing it in one go was possibly not going to happen. I was looking for those islands where I would be able to then berth. Having marked the islands, we got into the river, we crossed, and wonder of wonders, by then I had captured 3 Pakistani PT-76s, whom we prepared for crossing and took them along and also crossed.
Now, while the Indians were moving from Agartala to Dhaka, from the north out of Meghalaya, in a place called Tura, the Indian army came down from the north to the south, and the first Marathas, who were the leading troops there, they crossed the Brahmaputra, they fought through Bakshiganj, Kamalpur, and a famous battle broke through the Jamalpur garrison. And they soon link up with the Paras, and as you will soon see, they link up with the troops which were coming in from Agartala across the Meghna.
Later, the count was 234 Pakistanis killed, 23 wounded, 62 of them surrendered in my company position and my colleagues' company. And my battalion commander then, when he got this great news, he ordered me to take my company and secure the garrison.
I just want to point out that by the middle of December, the USS Enterprise had come into the Bay of Bengal, and I want to bring to your notice that the war to liberate Bangladesh almost precipitated a superpower conflict at our doorstep. But as late as the 14th of December, when the Indians were in the outskirts of Dhaka, the Al-Badr militia, raised by the Pakistan army, carried out targeted assassination of 250 Bengali intellectuals. Let's hear the brother of a victim.
The last phase of the present the struggle. They prepared a list of the intellectuals, journalists, and teachers, and they picked up at least 250. They thought that they are the sole enemy because these people have brain on the Bengal.
It was 14th when Air Headquarters in New Delhi got a message saying that a very important meeting convened by the governor of East Pakistan and attended by the cabinet and the bureaucrats is taking place in Dhaka. We exit out and took off. After takeoff, I pulled out that map from my pocket. I pulled up to about 2 kilometers of height, aimed at the bottom of the dome on the roof of the governor's house. As I reached the firing range, I let go 16 rockets. those hit just on top of the roof below the dome.
Well, I got there after the first wave on the governor's house, which half destroyed the residents. Then I got there this afternoon, I found the governor in the bunker, in the garden, trembling like a leaf. As we were standing around this bunker, so there was another raid. And all hell broke loose. There was an enormous crash, and harder the crash died down, but the governor suddenly produced a ballpoint pen, scrap of paper, a few cartons, and a good amount of resignation stuff in a matter of seconds, just in time actually for the second big crash.
Having crossed, we are now sitting outside Lakshya River, linking up with 4 guards commanded by Lieutenant General later, then Colonel Himmat Singh, few 4 guards. We are carrying out operations across the Lakshya River when we hear some noises about ceasefire, but our battle was over. And from then on, of course, it was like driving into Dhaka.
General Simon, a few words, would you not have seen to surrender? As it remains to go on?
No, why should we surrender? Spread the rumor that I have run away. The Grand Broadcasting Corporation, BBC. I can tell you one thing, man. After that, I will take a time over my body. You will see my dead body alive.
Indians finally arrived. Welcome to Dhaka. Looking at the scene from this end, it would seem like I'm right on the Pakistan army. Is that a fair assessment of what's been?
I wouldn't say that. I think it's very heavy and hard fighting.
Were there moments where they did really put up a fight to the death?
Oh, yes, it was practically everywhere. The Pakistanis fought extremely well on this.
So what I do is that we'll have a conversation after this, because immediately after this, the surrender happens. And there is, I've got about 10-15 minutes more, but I think we're running a bit short of time. Just to round it up, what happens is the Pakistanis were in the United Nations on the 15th morning. It was entirely possible that there would be a mandated ceasefire, which the Poles had moved. So we'll save that for the conversation. But after this, we took 93,000 prisoners of war and handed over and the Indian army pulled out of Pakistan, of Bangladesh on the 12th of March. For me, it's a very, my friend Sri Nair and I, he helped me enormously about 7-8 years back. Admiral Gupta, he was most generous. This entire episode is about an hour. You have a inclined. I say this because never in the history of the world has a nation been created the way India created Bangladesh. So people talk to me about other campaigns in general area, and we say that you go liberate Tibet, come back and then talk to us. It was a very important kind of thing. To just give you an idea, 2,816 officers and men laid down their lives in East Pakistan. And as you saw, and there are a lot of students here, and General Dere and I this is the 19th presentation we are doing, is that this is the first time we are talking to students, and we are very happy to be here. And the reason is that when you read in newspaper that we'll go in and we'll do this, it's very complex. It's a lot of, there are millions of moving parts which you saw. There's a history professor sitting here who is a friend of mine. I've known him now for 2 years. And when they tell you that this is not easy, please understand. When you say let's go to war, it doesn't happen like that. And the other thing which you must remember is that what is some unrelated. Why did the Chinese not move? The Chinese did not move because General Marshal Lin Biao, who was the head of the Chinese army, he had fallen out of Mao Zedong. He was escaping from China, and his aircraft crashes in a place called Ondrokan in Mongolia. So the Chinese had their own problems. The point I'm trying to make is that it's a very complex web. It has been a learning for me. If you ask me about any other Indian campaign, I know nothing, so don't ask me. This one I know thanks to my friends. So,
and while he's coming in, another point that was made is about the American aircraft carrier enterprise there. But you must remember the Russians had a submarine group tailing them right through. So that, ensured that they really didn't do very much, or couldn't do very much.
I'll just get a slide where Gupta is on the screen. I will make a brief introduction. He looks like a college professor. He's one of India's finest combat pilots, and he has told the story. He got commissioned on flying an aircraft of the deck of an aircraft. Flying an aircraft from the deck of an aircraft carrier is very complex. It's a very difficult art and skill. He was among the first 13 pilots, 11. He was among the first 11 pilots of the Indian military history to have done that. Fair?
Yes.
And because they are very particular, I can't sort of overstate it. Take me aside and what you said was not right. And he was a junior. Now, I will embarrass him by telling a story which Shri told me over a drink many years back, and I asked him, can I tell the story? Okay, that you can, and all the cameras are on. Now, in 1965, none of you were born, India fought a war with Pakistan. And at the time, he was marrying his wife. Her name was Sita, and I met her. She was a charming lady. And Shri had said, when you meet Gupta, ask him the story. I said, sir, is it true? Did you tell the story? Let's start with that story. So, when you use this.
Can you all hear me? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The story of 65, I was to get married on the 12th of May, 65. And so I was proceeding from my station in Cochin, a train journey that took me 4 days to go to Dehradun, where I belong, and bring the barat with me and get married a week later on the 12th in Bangalore. But the moment I got to Bangalore by train, I thought I'll see my fiancée before I proceed any further. But the military police got hold of me and said, no, you have to go back. I said, I've just left Cochin. He said, no, here's your warrant and you have to go back. Hostilities have been declared between India and Pakistan and all leave is cancelled. So your leave also is cancelled. So whilst he allowed me to meet her, but he made sure that I went to Cochin. And that was the 4th. Now on the 5th, we got orders to embark on Vikrant. The Vikrant is based in Bombay, and there are 2 squadrons that Vikrant holds, one each in Goa and Cochin. So I was flying with the aircraft in Cochin those days. So we all embarked, and there was nothing more except we were preparing for war. And so there was no question of thinking about marriages and anything like that. But we were all trying to get back to flying fitness and firing and so on. And Vikrant was also preparing to operate. So this is what happened. The leave was when the operation, the hostilities ended in June, a good 5 weeks later, or 4 weeks later. And so we all went on leave again after that, December. And again, as you know, in 65, it's the second war which was fought much more vigorously. It was in September. That time Vikrant was not operational. So going back to the marriage now, it's like this. There were no communication. Once the hostilities are declared, the ships maintain total silence for fear that if you transmit from a ship, you will be intercepted by the enemy and they will know your location. So there is total prohibition on making any signals from sea. So that was the first thing. There's no way of communicating now with my in-laws to be. But messages were, I sent out 3 messages between the 5th and the 11th. And that was through a helicopter which would go ashore, land ashore, and somebody would send the telegram from me, and I would get a reply back at sea. You could receive messages, you can't transmit. So 3 messages. One was that
please postpone the wedding. And so the answer came back a day later saying that no, we will stick to 12th May and it will be in Bangalore. The second one was that the admiral in the fleet who was embarked on Vikrant, fleet commander, he accepted an invitation in, to be in Bombay on the 12th. And that was the wedding day. So I promptly, when I heard this, I sent a message through helicopter again saying, please consider marriage in Bombay. And now this is about 6th or 7th, 7th or 8th of May. And promptly the answer came, no, we will not change the venue, we will not change the date. So that was it. So we didn't know really, but there were two of us that got married on the same day. One was to get married in Bombay, and a very good friend of mine did fitness, and I was to get married in Bangalore. Now, since the admiral had unofficially accepted Fitness's invitation to be present in Bombay, that's how I got the inkling that Bombay was sure Vikrant would be there. And it so happened Vikrant was there for just one day, and it sailed out at night, midnight on 12th night. It so happened that way too. But it was on the 11th when the admiral graciously agreed and told the captain of the aircraft carrier that please give them an aircraft each, let them get married in their respective cities, with the proviso that no rules can't be bent, so they must be back on board within 24 hours. So that's what happened. We took off on the wedding day. My muhurtam was around 10:30, and I landed there only at 9:30. Why? Because we were strapped in to get launched at dawn, but there was no wind. You don't require wind on deck to get airborne, especially if you're carrying full fuel, because the aircraft is heavy. And so we waited, and for 2 hours in the cockpit, both of us were waiting, and eventually we got launched. How? We had to defuel it, lighten the aircraft, and therefore the aircraft carrier moved a little nearer Bangalore, because I had 400 miles to go, and so also the other pilot. So it was quite fair that we were both had to go for similar distances. And the next morning we were back. At 7 o'clock we were given the orders before we went. At 7 o'clock with the hooking on. That means you land on the ground at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so we were there at 5 to 7. And we were given priority to land, while some other aircraft were already flying around. That was the story. But the story doesn't end there in the sense that we really didn't get leave for a month and a half after that. So she would follow the carrier everywhere. When she learned that the plant was going to be in Bombay, she came to Bombay. But then the ship sailed out the very next day. And so she came to Goa because squadrons got disembarked in Goa. But that time the hostages had seized. So my squadron I changed now from Cochin to Goa. I was flying the jets now with them. So I got off at Goa. And we threw a big party. The two of us both belonged to the same squadron. And at the party night, my wife was told that I have to go to Cochin next morning. So because I was qualified on both the aircraft, so I had to take an aircraft to bring back the other Elise aircraft. But so happened that I went to Cochin, and there the squadron grabbed me and said, you cannot go back, you belong to us. And so she came to Cochin. Now, you were flying those days on Dakota. It was very hard way of traveling, really. And so Bombay, from Bangalore to Bombay to Goa, Goa to Cochin. And that's when I got leave a month and a half later. I got leave for about 10 days to go to North. In the meantime, of course, what had happened was my parents had arrived on the date because there were no messages, there was no way of sending their messages. And so they arrived with my brother and my sister and my mother and so on. And so my brother had already taken measurements of my headgear and ashtan and so on. And so he brought that along because I had no other clothes with me. And flying overalls, that is all that I had because the ammunition base, you can't keep any baggage. everything I depended upon my brother who came along and brought the right stuff. And so that was it. Nothing much, but I had a small uh, incident when I took off. First of all, when I landed, I made sure that I flew over the house in Bangalore. So they knew I've actually come. And I gave them enough time because the HAL was the aircraft, was the airport. And so also on leaving next morning, uh, after the wedding had previous night, all other events had been cancelled long before. And in the morning, I was loaded with sweetmeats, laddus, I remember, and so on. And these youngsters were all, made me feel very important. So I took off and I did some rolls and aromatics and all laddus all fell on the aircraft. And when that happens, the aircraft is unserviceable for one day. They have to move the ejection seat, they move everything, flush out everything, so there is nothing restricting your controls. So that was it. Next morning we were, on the ground.
Yeah. This so if you marry a naval officer, say that I only marry you to come in an aircraft. Yeah. So questions, couple of questions. Yeah, sure. Ask whatever question.
Yeah, thank you so much. Fantastic presentation. Absolutely fascinating. My question to you specifically is about you mentioned the Mujib Nagar government, and you also mentioned that the ISI and CIA had infiltrated. Now, the story that we heard, especially after assassination of Mujib, was that Khandakar Mushtaq was already compromised. So, could you please tell us a little bit about that internal dynamics? What was happening in Mujib Nagar government? Because a lot of people believe that it was a united front kind of a situation. So, what are the internal differences? Tajuddin was on one side, Khandakar was on the other side. If you could just elaborate on that.
So very briefly, what happened is this: that these guys had their tails up because they had won every single seat in East Pakistan, barring two, which was Chittagong Hill Tracts with Prince Narayan Roy, who went over to West Pakistan, and there was a man whose name I forget. He had won the Mehman Singh seat. So, like all political parties who win seats, they believe they had unequal support for whatever they wanted to do and get away with it, which is not the case because they are only about 40% of the vote share. Now, Government of India wanted to quickly wrap this up, and there is record that TP Dhar comes down to Calcutta and tells them that please include all the legislators. Just can't run it like a presidential system. This was one. In fact, we missed that out. Mehta keeps saying that it was democracy over dictatorship which won. The second thing to your point is that they refused to take any other political party into the fold. The Awami League said, this is us, no more. This got corrected again by TP Dhar in a Siliguri conference at a point in time, which you are aware of. Managing the Bengali politicians is a story from hell. Let me be very categoric about it. And there are horrible stories. In fact, managing their army was even more difficult because they said that, we have been fighting Indians for the last so many years. Who are these people to tell us? So there are terrible stories between General Arora and M.H. Osmani. Because remember, Osmani retired as a colonel and he was a supply corps officer. So good Indian Desi Sardar style, either he gone as supply corps colonel types. They would treat him like that. And it was very sensitive. To answer your question, there is a very good account left that they even tried to assassinate Tajuddin Ahmed. There is a guy called Qayyum who is available on the State Department and the CIA records. If you ever go to Washington, you go to the Library of Congress, I've seen it. Who Qayyum was, nobody knows. Somebody says that there was a man called Qayyum, others say that it is non-diplom. But Qayyum was the interlocutor between the Americans and the American consulate. And the guy who was feeding this information was a Russian consul general in Calcutta. I forget his name, Grignov or something like that. I don't remember the name. So you are absolutely right. I mean, and Khandakar Mushtaq was a man. He's serious. He was like Rasputin. And later, when Mujib gets assassinated, they make him the president, as you well know. And there's a guy called Major Darling who goes on to the Bangladesh radio station and says we'll be an Islamic Republic. It was the 15th of August, the day Mujib was killed. But next day, Samar Sen, who was India's High Commissioner of Dhaka, who you saw, he was in the United Nations, he goes and reads out the Riot Act to Khandagar Mushtaq. But your assessment is absolutely right. I mean, I didn't have time to discuss it, but I'm more than happy to discuss it.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Kolol Bhattacharjee. So,
Really, thank you so much. I talked to you. I think a bit of it is in the book.
yeah, thanks. Just one little question. Is there a full list that was prepared in 1971 by the agencies or the Indian military forces or the Mukti Bahini soldiers? Is there a full list available anywhere?
Yeah, so there are three things which I'd just like to mention briefly, and General Derry and I discuss it quite often. One is that, interestingly, that when the guerrilla workforce was set up, in April, May, June, they got butchered. 30% of them used to come back dead and would not come back. They died and they would just go their stuff. It's a terrible story because Osmani had his own strategy. These guys, Jacob had his own strategy. That is why they brought in Jal Sarkar. Yeah. And Anil has actually investigated because he's from Central Indian Mosque. Now, the thing is this that the Awami League said that all the Mukti Bahini guerrillas will be Awami League cadres. So, from Sylhet and from various other places, so from various other places, this was one problem which the Indian commanders were having, right? And then they said, and that is the reason why there were 7 or 8 other, private militias like Qadar Bahini and so on and so forth. To answer your question within a list of, there's a problem. Well, let me just answer this problem. You know this story about the naval thing which was run in Plassey? That is very well documented by somebody Anil knows, Captain Samant. And
Operation X.
Operation.
It is available.
The book is available. Yeah. Sandeep Mohita's book. But Sandeep rang me up one morning, and just after my book was launched, I was absolutely terrified, as to people would just slaughter me for what I've written. But Sandeep rang up and to say, I hope you've given me credit for Operation X. I said, of course, not only have I given you credit, I said, it is because of you this whole thing got done. But I asked him what happened to the other camps, Alpha, Bravo, Delta, Charlie, and FJ. No documentation. Anil and I are struggling with it. In fact, every time we were at the National Defense College 4 days back, we left the thought, all those records have been destroyed. And even one more thing, the Tibetans were put into Chittagong Hill Tract because those guys were brought out to fight the war. And they had to be convinced as to what are they doing fighting in Bangladesh. I mean, that's a story in itself. But Sujat Singh Oman has also passed away and that story is also gone forward. But I'd love to talk to you about it, although I would very much welcome anything that I so
if the records are available, if they are that, if they're still available, they're possibly lying in Eastern Command in Calcutta. I don't think Army headquarters has anything about it. So hopefully if it's available, we'll try and get hold of it.
As a matter of fact, there's another interesting story that is related to it, which is that during the elections, Jamaat kept saying that Indians keep saying that 12,000 women are raped, but where is the record? You're aware of that, right? The record, the details were actually, Dr. Jeffrey Davis says the number was much higher than 200,000 women raped. Because the society, Bengali society is such that if something, this kind of violation happens, people didn't want to, I think 300 odd went and met Mujib. And they found it very difficult. There's a movie by Lisa Ghazi, as you know. And so, yeah.
So the whole course of that led to the liberation for Pakistan started from down the separations of Congress, then to the counterintelligence of tribal warfare, and then full-blown war between Pakistan and India. I would rather have more interested in reality and the justifications made by the army of Pakistan. Because there is involvement of governments, Pakistan, and the people perspective in the ground where people are. So, perspective of people is what the issues in the whole
It's
I more about the military tactics and a military point of view.
It is there in the book, but let me put it to you this way, and I think a conversation is warranted on that. Because the Bengalis have left a lot of very rich material about the kind of brutalization which happened. I mean, my source document, and one has to be very sensitive about these things. You can't just go and And I'm neither a scholar nor I just tripped into this. But having said that, I think the person who's left detailed records of how did this number of 12,000 plus come up? In fact, if you read a book by Siddiq Salik, who was from the Pakistan Army, A Witness to Surrender, Siddiq says that we had 9 guys who we cashiered. I mean, the fact that he's admitted to 9 is good enough. I mean, but I've got visual evidence from people like Jan Mehta. If you ever happen to meet Jan Mehta, which I think sometime you must meet, he was the one who swam the tanks across. He said that he has actually seen this to tie up these women in manacles and drag them in, break them, and throw them back. He has seen it with his own eyes. He has seen children 3-year-old children being thrown up in the air and falling on the bare. He has seen it. The whole Dhaka Gurdwara, which is the Gurdwara which was set up by Guru Nanak, it's one of the oldest Gurdwaras. The whole Gurdwara was vandalized by these were Sikh troops. They flew in Granthis from Delhi to concentrate it. I mean, as an armored corps officer, Anil would know that story. The same thing happened in Ramna Kaliwadi. They killed about 300 odd people that night. And the Ramna Kaliwadi story is brutal because they killed these people. And the Nepalese got upset because the Kaliwadi was set up by the Nepalese. And the story came out because of the Russian consul general in Calcutta. We were unable to do this because Anil and I do this, this is the 19th presentation. We are unsure as to what to keep and what not to keep. I'll be honest because every audience is different. We didn't know who would come. Excuse us for that. Just, yeah.
Just supplementing to this question. Has anybody done a proper documentation of the local experience of that war?
Oh yeah, lots of it. As a matter of fact, the Bengali records are phenomenal. That is one. The other is that there are, my friend Manoj Ghosh, who used to work for the Statesman, he has written 2 books, and I keep talking to Manoj. People like Ollol, who are journalists. I mean, in India, we are. I'm making a statement. I'm going to stand by it, that in a society, journalists are extremely important. Fearless journalists. We lost. There were 2 journalists. I don't remember from UNI or something. They were near Agartala. The Pakistani army pulled them in and they killed them. Right? This guy is Sidney Shanberg of the New York Times. He was sent back to Karachi or wherever, London via Colombo, and sent back. He said, "You get out from here." But it is only when journalists are there then they report on the ground what happened. To answer your question, there's a lot of material available in Bangla, as to what actually happened. It was brutal. A lot of it, I talked to you about it. I will actually share it with you. So there is a narration by Manoj on the 29th of March. My date is wrong, so don't hold me to the date. They had gone to Chachor, which is in Jessore. There's the Rajbari. 300 women completely clad in burqas, and they were oozing blood in the pond. 300. The Statesman reporter was so shocked that he refused to take the photographs of what happened. And I say this for 2-3 reasons. One is that I, as a citizen of India, feel that we stepped in for a humanitarian crisis. Look what is happening in Gaza. No one is helping. Here, this country stood up. We are here in Assam. Assam paid a huge price in 1971. Tripura paid a huge. I say Assam because Meghalaya and Assam are the same state at that time. Right? So, referring it to. So, it's a horrible story. And as we were discussing after that, what happens is that we integrated Sikkim into India without firing a bullet. And Pakistan sent an army in Balochistan.
The essence again is that interviewing the military for Pakistan, about to understand and deal with the
I don't know.
and how to come.
I talked to you about it. I would love to see it. And a lot of operations actually happened from Assam. The main airport which was used to attack Dhaka was Bolchar, Guwahati. They went to Tezpur. The whole corps moved from Tezpur to Agartala. And I would urge you after this is over, corner Admiral Gupta. I mean, that story, he makes things sound so easy, but it's a story which challenges imagination. I mean, to hide, children hide toys, they hit the Vikrant. So, one more question. Anyone?
It's like, it's really very, very difficult. It's a complex thing, and unless I saw it here, I would never have believed. And I thought, okay, Bangladesh and Pakistan and India. I didn't know much about it. I am not much of a reader, these things. But after discussing, certainly I'm going to read the book.
No, I also say one thing. The problem is that these two gentlemen who are sitting on my right, talk to them at a dinner, they make things sound so simple. They do, both of them. I mean, one has seen tank battles and one has, Gupta has commanded the Vikrant. It's a very rare privilege.
It is an honor.
It's an honor. But the point is, you need to sit and talk to them. They should feel that you are interested.
Yes.
And I tell you, the work we do in the private sector is on a 10-point scale, 1 or 2 compared to what they do. And they do it and they come back and they don't talk about it.
The thing is, once we ask a question, they just reply in 1 or 2 sentences, and that is it. So you just have to go through the book and then read.
Yeah. So we have to act
questions.
In contrast, I spoke so long about my marriage.
So that story no one knows.
That hats off to ma'am. She went to so many places.
My daughter was sitting here was 2 years old at that time.
What?
So tell us more about it.
About the Vikrant.
Yes, sir. About the Vikrant.
I spent
a
a lot of time on Vikrant. 10 or 12 years. Right from the junior most pilot to commanding the ship. 7 different assignments I had on the ship. So they dubbed me an aviator, and therefore my growth beyond rear admiral didn't happen because there is an aviator. Although I've commanded 4 ships. But what is not well known is that Vikrant was non-operational. And for 1 year she'd been lying in docks, and everybody had thrown up their hands that you cannot have her going to sea again. This was 1978 July. We were disembarked because we developed a very serious problem. Mention was made in passing about the one boiler out of the 4 being non-operational and actually dangerous to charge because it could explode, the boat could go down with that. So, but we needed the 4th boiler because without that you cannot have a catapult to launch you. It requires steam. Without that, we could not even get our speeds. Restricted 14 knots, which were 20 miles per hour approximately, and we need 25 knots. With full weapon load, full fuel, or the jet aircraft require more than almost twice the speed of what is available. Now, big compromises everywhere. If the speed falls below 25, we start removing 1 or 2 rockets, or removing 2 bombs, or we start less fuel. When you get closer, we can sacrifice a bit on fuel. But fuel is always a very important factor because when you come back to the ship, if the ship is not ready for you, then you had it, isn't it? Although it's all well known, but ship had her own problems. And once the lift could not come up, not coming up means you can't land. You can't get arrested. The wires go over the lift, which is now down. So we almost had to eject. Last bit of fuel we all managed, just managed. So, I mean, other 8, 10 aircraft would have been lost like that. So it's more than one instance. Then we had a radar which was not very temperamental. Don't forget, the ship was very old. The ship was commissioned in 61, war was in 71. From 70 we had a problem, but the ship hull had been laid in 1944. That was not the problem.
The modernization, the electronics were letting us down. So the radar, which gave us early warning of enemy coming in, we would lose the radar sometimes, and now it was your eyes were as good as the radar. So you shouldn't get lost. Your ship can't get you back now. Because how do we know our position? We just know because when we took off at a certain time, and you're coming back after a certain time, where could the ship have moved? So, and yet you're coming in with critical fuel. So it's always a little gamble. And as I mentioned to you, the lift would come up once, and that was very, very serious. And I was in fact told that don't worry, uh, uh, you all, if you ditch, Jumbo will pick you up. Jumbo is the nickname given to a helicopter, which is always standing by all aircraft operation, whether you're landing or taking off. That picks up the ejection of the pilot who has ejected. So it is like that. But you know, having said all this, but no one would not want to fly. Nobody wanted to miss out any sort. Because the biggest problem was who to eliminate, especially with the first day. Everybody was itching. So when I came back after the first sortie, the engine room department, who was very crucial, just like the aviation and engineers for all work, they garlanded me with onions and potatoes and stuffed a laddu in my mouth and made it in the ship. And so it was one of those things where the whole ship was wanted to see the results. They've been working under very adverse conditions. They've done, they know 120, 130 degrees. Imagine people working there for so long and holding on to the boilers and seeking any leaks that happen, they shut the boiler. Now you can lose a few aircraft, but you can't lose the whole ship. So it is like that. It's touch and go many a time. Nobody knows that. But of course the ship is always coming.
Any last words?
Yeah.
Just there are two sentences story about Mike Mara.
Well, Mike was one of my buddies, and he was my number two. He tells me, he reminds me. It means he guards my tail in case enemy comes in. So he first attack in Cox's Bazar. We all went 8 aircraft launch, and we led 2 rockets, and in second attack the machine guns, and destroyed all that there was in the runway. Mike Bada had got to make the switch. So he had full load of ammunition back. Now you can't show his face again, but ammunition all there. So he did, without telling me, he quickly went down, struck again, and the ship, when they saw the radar, only 7 aircraft coming back. It was supposed to be 8. So they asked me, who have you lost? I said, I lost nobody, except I had to see my number 2 missing. I didn't tell him that. But he told me later on that this is what he did, which I actually knew. But he didn't know. He didn't know that I knew.
He met him in Bombay. He was there. Yeah, so just 2 points I'll make. For example, this helicopter lifting the people across the Meghna. Okay. So these helicopters of those days were relatively small. They could have carried normally 18. At a pinch, they may have carried 20. So you see the number of times to carry 6,000 people across. Not an easy job. Yeah, and you have only one squadron. The other, the PT-76 tanks. Now all of you live on the Brahmaputra. You know the current on the Brahmaputra. You know that when you take off from point A, normally you reach point B, which is downstream. Okay, you can't go right across. So imagine a tank like that, which can barely do not even 2 knots. There's no speed at all. And it drifts. So what he had to do was go from island to island. Because if he'd gone straight, he would have landed with the Bay of Bengal. Most probably. Okay. So it wasn't an easy job to do what they did. And normally it's meant to do maximum about a kilometer. And that too in still water. Lakes in Europe and Russia don't have the kind of currents we have. Okay, there's no current at all. They're very, very. Yeah. So you have to understand the circumstances under which they carried out these stuff. It's 2 examples.
Thank you.
So, as we come to the end of this enriching session, it has taken us beyond textbooks and to the heart of history, I would say. And thank you to our esteemed guests for their valuable presence and to the audience for being such active listeners. And thank you. Everyone is requested to have tea in the right hand side of the chamber.